Welcome to Living Legacy Leadership, where we explore, discover, and share insights, tools, and strategies for a life well lived into elderhood. I'm your host, Donna Kim Brand, author, speaker, legacy strategy coach, and creator of the concept Living Legacy, where you choose to live life on your own terms while contributing to people, places, and projects along your life journey. I believe that the life you live is the legacy you leave. Now, the guests I bring to you each week all address some unique aspect of learning, leadership, or legacy. This helps you raise your own game as a leader in business and life, and also showcases some extraordinary people who exemplify living legacy leadership. At least once a month, I also offer a training session to skill you in game changer thinking for your own application. So get your notebook ready or sharpen up your memory by tuning in your attention, and we'll dive right in. Now, we have the pleasure today of a return guest on our show. By popular demand, we have back Ron Donovan. He's a longtime international executive coach with his company Strategic Magic. And the company says, and Ron says, when you're trying to make change in a complex system, you either have cooperation or you have failure. But Ron approaches these things on a human level, and that's apropos to what we're going to be talking about today, Ron, on how to be a good neighbor after the election. We're talking about the U.S. election of recent weeks. So welcome, Ron Donovan.
Hi, Donna. Thank you.
So before we get into anything like what the media is talking about, have you, Ron, had any personal experiences either with family gatherings or conversations on the phone or people you pass walking on the beach of your island or your neighbors where there's been some very heartfelt and often not so friendly exchanges about the recent election or the political parties or the points of view?
Absolutely. My sister and I are on opposite sides of the line as far as right and left. So we often have conversations. And I have two friends here on Whidbey Island who are strong Republicans. One of them very strongly supportive of President Trump and willing sometimes and eager to argue. So I have, I don't know if it's a lot of experience, but it seems like plenty to me.
I mean, I know you in general, even though you're a man of many and strong opinions, my experience of you over the years has been pretty much that you're non-controversial, or at least you don't seek controversy. So how have you handled these exchanges where, like you say, this guy might have been a little bit in your face about his point of view?
Right. Well, my one friend here on the island was at one point my neighbor, and we had many conversations. I met him when Obama was the president, and he was very frustrated. He didn't think he did a good job or ever could do a good job. So we had a lot of conversations, but they were not confrontational. When you ask me, how do I deal with it? I'm not looking for a fight. So I simply smooth the way. So if my friend says, you guys, which he often does, you guys are all supportive of this thing which is going to ruin the country, I don't respond. I'm just not interested in the battle. And usually it softens him up. I mean, usually it makes him relax a bit and not get into the fight. Right after the election, 2016, he came over to our house, which was not unusual. Over to the house, and he was really awful. I mean, going after us like he'd won some big prize. And this went on for about half an hour before he left. And my wife was pretty upset, and I thought, what was that about? But I didn't. I didn't.
Sounds
let
a
it
bit
change
like gloating to me.
Yeah. Well, it was serious gloating, but it was also, poking us about, where we had failed and how we hadn't seen what was going on and how now the country would would rise up and do better. And okay, but I wasn't into that sort of gloating even after this last election. And so I called him up a couple of weeks after that. We went for a drive somewhere. It was just back to normal. And I think, although, some people are so interested in having a fight that they win that it's impossible to change, I think that if you're dealing with a relative or a friend or neighbor and they're becoming angry with you, they really want to have a fight that they can win, it's really difficult to avoid that. Sometimes the thing you have to do is simply move away. But if you can just be kind, that I remember thinking that one of the things that had happened to my friend was 8 years of a president he thought was a failure must have been really frustrating. He must have been really upset. And then to bring the Republican victory up as a big victory over us, it just seemed like it might be natural for a lot of people. So I just let it go.
It's interesting how personal and personalized this particular election seemed to be. It's almost like people revert to some kind of tribal identity.
It is strange, isn't it? I mean, I think from what I know of history and having been on the planet for a while, I don't think that really anything has changed in the people as far as their beliefs. We've had strong right-wingers, strong left-wingers, both trying to make the world in their own shape. And we've always had that. But I think the thing that changed is the ability or the belief that you have the ability to have the argument. We saw it right away with the president who was, over the last 4 years, willing and eager to have an argument in his own terms. And I think there were a lot of people on both sides of the divide who saw this as an okay to be nasty. Now, they were always nasty, just not to each other. And this time it's really changed, and we have a lot of really angry people, and people saying things which are just, I don't know even how you describe them. When someone says, here, take all the people from the Democratic Party and put one bullet in their head, nobody alive. Or say, cut off the head of the infectious disease department, put it on a spike. We're talking, when you talk about tribes, we're talking about ancient description of tribes. And I think it's been good, and I take a positive look at this. It's been good that we haven't had more real violence. And
yeah, so far, although depending on what still plays out there, that possibility still exists. But the whole notion of civil discourse and being civilized, we think we're so civilized, but we didn't seem to manifest a whole lot of that in recent months. And what I found so odd too was how people, and like you said, and maybe it was the example of taking personal attacks, but where you assumed if somebody had a point of view supporting one side or the other, then you assumed that they came with a basket of stereotypes. Like I had lady friends in a recent discussion that were saying, well, all Republicans are racist. Well, that's not true. And I had friends who would say all Democrats are socialist. Well, that's not true. So it was almost accusatory and embracing this whole stereotype of labeling, rather than understanding either where people were coming from, or that frankly they may not like the personality on either side, but they have one issue that's really important to them. Maybe it's immigration, maybe it's the police, maybe it's abortion, maybe it's climate control. Depending on what side of those issues you fall on, if that's your number one issue, you might vote for a candidate that you don't like simply because it appears they support your particular strong view on that issue.
I think you're absolutely right. And that has always, I think, been the case. We've never gotten to the point. I mean, no, this is not really true. In the United States government and history, we've seen a lot of attacks which make the people who believe differently from you look like the enemy.
Right.
Of course, they're not the enemy. They simply have a belief, as you point out. It could be just one belief different from your own, and suddenly you throw them into a category of nasty people, of people who will tear the country down. And it becomes easier if what you're trying to do is to win a battle. You have to have a lot of people on your side.
Yeah.
And it becomes easier to win the battle if the people who don't agree with you are really looked at as the enemy.
Right.
Now, you and I were raised during a time when the right and the left, of course, they didn't agree. But of course, they felt they had to work together to help to improve the country. So there were a lot of bipartisan things were done. There were compromises made that helped the country to move forward. Now, it's sort of, the idea that Republicans would compromise with Democrats seems just wistful. Why would you compromise with people who are your absolute enemy? And so I think that's something we have to get back to, the idea that, no, they're not an enemy. They simply have different beliefs on a few issues. If I listed, say, the top 50 issues that are important to me, and I took somebody from the far right and they listed their top 50 issues, I bet over half of them would be exactly the same. Mm-hmm. All of us who have a family think we'd like the world to be better for our children. It doesn't matter if you're a right-wing Republican or a left-wing Democrat. It just is a part of the basic human condition. We might think that we would like a job that we enjoy and pays a good salary. Okay, I know that people would like that for themselves. Some people think others shouldn't have it. Some people think others should. Some people think nobody should work anymore. Okay, they may have to find the money, but they aren't our lifeblood enemy if they have those beliefs. I think we would find, if there was somebody working to bring that to the fore, we would find that we have a lot more in common than we have apart.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the way I think. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, in terms of the system and the way the system has now developed, system of government, where funding is so important, where you have to be polarized to get people's attention. The whole notion of people in government being a public servant there to serve the people seems to have been sort of lost in the shuffle, and it's lowered the sort of caliber of leadership that make it through the system to supposedly represent us. At least that's my point of view.
The way it looks, doesn't it? Yeah. I mean, it's the way it looks, and I don't know why that is supported. If you are the head of a part of the government and you simply say, I will spend the next 4 or 8 years making sure they accomplish nothing, you've said that you're making sure they accomplish nothing for the American people. You've said that the idea of the credit for that will be taken away from them, and we'll wait till we can take the credit in 4 or 8 years. Mm. It's strange, and it's not something, when you ask the question, how can we deal with our friends, relatives, neighbors, and